Howdy everyone. You can see I've got this left gear leg is now in place. This is just a temporary fit up. The leg itself is pretty much complete, but as far as actually fitting it correctly to the gear leg, I have not done that. To do that properly, you have to have the aircraft up off the ground so that the landing gear hangs freely. And I believe the aircraft should also be leveled. So you want to simulate that it's flying, and then you fit the gear leg in that orientation. I'm not doing that yet. I'm not that far. I just have this leg pretty much finished and dry fit, if you will, to the gear leg itself, just to see how things are working out. I think it has worked out very, very well. I'm very happy with the process that I've used, and I'm going to use that exact same process to do the other leg. And I will be walking you guys through that step by step the way that I've done it. It's not exactly to plans, but it just made sense to me at the time when I was fabricating this one. And I thought it worked out quite well. So I'm going to get cranking on the other side, and I'll take you guys step by step through my process, and we'll see how it goes. All right, talk to you guys here in a second. All right, so let's get cranking on this other gear leg. So I'm going to try to walk literally step by step everything that I've done to get from this point, which is just a raw, as supplied by Van's gear leg, to the finished product, which you just saw on the gear leg itself. So the first thing that I do, the very first thing that I do is mark a center line down the leading edge. So here it is right here. This black line represents roughly the center line down the leading edge of the entire leg. Now that is a little bit of a guess, just because with this being already gel coated from the factory, you can't see through it. Even if I put a flashlight on here, I can't really tell where the parting line is between the two halves. So I just basically hold it up on end, and I try to eyeball it as best I can to get it centered on this side. And then I'll do the same thing on this end. I'll just kind of hold it upright and look at it and study it and try to figure out where basically center is, make a line on this end, and then I just connect the two lines down the length of the leg to get this leading edge front. The next thing that I do, and this is where it starts to get a little bit more important. The instructions tell you basically that you want the gear leg to be flat. You don't want it to twist from one end to the other, just like the wings. You don't want a twist in it. So what I had elected to do was I used painter's tape. This is 1 inch wide painter's tape. And I'll tape along this entire trailing edge. Since this is 1 inch tape, I basically make a mark here that's just short of 1/2 inch, like 3/8 or so from the trailing edge. And I do the same thing here, roughly 3/8 of an inch or so, something less than 1/2 inch from the trailing edge. And then I'll take my tape and I'll run it from this mark across the trailing edge to this mark, and then I'll fold it over and stick it to the other side. But I'll do that on a very known flat surface, and I'll get to that in a minute. So right now I'm going to take my tape, I'm going to lay it across this trailing edge using my marks as a guide, and then I'll show you how I keep this flat and then roll it over onto the other side. So I'll be right back. Howdy everyone. Here we are with the tape now in place only on one side of the gear leg. Again, I just use my reference mark on each end of the leg to help me guide the tape to make sure that it stays nice and straight. You basically want the same amount of tape on both sides of the gear leg. Is it critical? No, but that's why I use the marks, just to get me close. So the tape is attached to the one side of the gear leg, and this is my known flat surface, this countertop. So at this point, what I do, I simply just flip the leg over. Just like that. And I'll make sure that the corners, this corner and this corner, stay down flat against the countertop. And as I hold this down against the countertop, I'll roll the tape over and attach it to this side. Now this trailing edge and the gear leg itself should not have any twist to it. It should lay nice and flat from end to end across the countertop. So again, I'm just going to hold this corner down and work my way down as I continue to hold the leg flat and roll this tape over and tape this closed. So let me do that, and I'll show you guys what that's all about here in a second. So there's the leg now taped along the trailing edge, and you can see, hopefully, that it lays perfectly flat across the entire length of the trailing edge in relation to the countertop. And I can't do this with one hand, but if you hold down a corner and you push on the leading edge, if you hold this corner and push on the leading edge, if I hold down this corner and I push on this leading edge, there's no twist. The leg doesn't want to move. It just rests nice and flat and straight on the countertop. Same thing here. I can hold this corner down here, and if I push on the trailing edge up in this corner, it doesn't move. It's not up. It lays nice and flat, so there's no movement at all with this leg. So I'm very confident that it's nice and straight and it has no twist. At this point, this tape will stay on until I get everything else laid out on the leg. And then I'll cut off the actual trailing edge at that point, and then of course the tape is no longer used. But I'll get to all that. So for now, we've got the leading edge center line reference, and we've got the trailing edge completely taped closed and tight, and the leg sits nice and flat on a flat surface with no twist. So next up is, if you reference drawing C3, this drawing has a full-size template for the gear leg fairings. And this is all talked about in the written instructions. Read the written instructions very carefully. There's a lot of good information in there. It comes across as confusing, at least for me, but I read through it a few times. I referenced this drawing a few times. And once I started going through the process, it became clear what they were trying to explain. So this is the full-size pattern. Be sure that you cut it where it says to cut for your specific airplane. So if you're building an RV4, you want to cut along this line. If you're building an RV9, you want to cut along this line. This is the trailing edge trim line, so you want to cut this out all the way around. And here are some more references for the different airplanes. RV4, RV9 is here, RV8 is back here. This line, this dotted line, is for the RV6 and 7. Again, just make sure you cut out the template to fit your specific airplane. So this one is already cut out because obviously I've already done a gear leg. So now this template will get laid over top of the actual gear leg itself. All right. So if you look on the template, they give you a center line right here. This center line at this corner and at this corner, that of course will lay in reference to the center line that we have drawn on the leading edge. Also in the written instructions, they talk about scribe marks. there are scribe marks on the leg from the factory. There's a scribe mark here, and then there's one that runs down the length of it here. And then there's another scribe mark right here on both sides. After you have the template cut out, again, this is cut out for an RV7, you see here where it says that this point is 3 inch 7/32 from the scribe line. Do not put this edge, let me flip my leg around so everything's oriented correctly. Do not put this edge on the edge of your gear leg. It specifically says that you're supposed to line this up with the scribe line, and here is the scribe line. So this template will be matched to the scribe line and in line with your center line across this edge, this front edge here. And then it's just a matter of smoothing it over the leg and taping it down. So let me do that. Let me get this template positioned on the gear leg, and I'll show you what that looks like, and I'll again reference some of these marks.